The world-renowned Kruger National Park, KNP, is currently facing one of its most severe environmental crises in decades. Following a week of relentless torrential rainfall brought by a persistent low-pressure system, the park's iconic landscapes have been transformed into a series of treacherous waterways. South African National Parks has declared a state of emergency within the park boundaries, as major rivers breach their banks, sweeping away infrastructure and forcing the emergency evacuation of hundreds of tourists. The crisis reached a breaking point when the Sabi, Olifants, Luvuvu, and Letaba rivers, the lifebloods of the park, rose to unprecedented levels. In the southern and central regions, the Crocodile River has surged over its floodplains, submerging low-lying bridges and making many of the park's primary arterial roads impassable. According to data from the South African Weather Service, certain stations within the KNP recorded over 400 millimeters of rain within a 72-hour window. This massive influx of water from the highveld catchment areas has turned dry drainage lines into raging torrents, isolating several rest camps from the outside world. SAN Parks Management, in coordination with the South African Air Force, launched a series of high-stakes helicopter rescues. Tourists stranded at Lower Sabi and Crocodile Bridge were airlifted to safety after the main access roads were cut off by rising water. "Safety is our absolute priority," said the KNP managing executive. "We have closed all gravel roads and several major tarred routes. We urge visitors to strictly adhere to the closures, as the force of the water is strong enough to wash away heavy 4x4 vehicles." Currently, several key camps including Lower Sabi, Crocodile Bridge, Talamati, and Bayamaitai remain closed to the public. Guests with existing reservations are being redirected or offered full refunds via the SAN Parks official website. While many of the Big Five are instinctively adapted to seasonal floods, the sheer scale of this event has put significant pressure on the park's wildlife. While aquatic species thrive, the increased turbidity and speed of the rivers have pushed many animals into unusual territories, often closer to human settlements on the park's periphery. Smaller mammals and ground-nesting birds have suffered high mortality rates. Larger herbivores, such as elephants and buffalo, have moved to higher ground, rhyolite ridges, but calves remain vulnerable to the cold and swift currents. Lions and leopards have been sighted struggling to hunt, as their usual ambush spots near watering holes are now completely submerged. The financial toll on the park's infrastructure is estimated to be in the hundreds of millions of rands. The high water mark has exceeded the structural design of several historic bridges, some of which show signs of significant cracking or have been partially washed away. Luxury riverfront units at Skukuza and Olifants have reported water ingress, damaging expensive tourism assets and telecommunications equipment. The park's boundary fences have been breached in multiple locations. This creates a high risk of human-wildlife conflict as predators may wander into neighboring community farmlands. The flooding has paralyzed the logistics of running Africa's premier safari destination. Delivery trucks carrying food, fuel, and essential supplies to camp shops and restaurants have been unable to reach their destinations. Staff housing in lower-lying areas has also been flooded, displacing dozens of park employees who are now being housed in temporary shelters. Kruger National Park is not just a South African treasure, but a UNESCO-recognized biosphere. The Wilderness Foundation and other conservation bodies are monitoring the situation closely. This is a natural cycle, but the intensity is a clear signal of the changing climate, noted a leading conservationist. The resilience of the Kruger ecosystem will be tested like never before. Meanwhile, a humanitarian and infrastructural crisis has unfolded across South Africa's northernmost province as relentless torrential rains have triggered widespread flooding, leaving a trail of destruction through the heart of Limpopo. From the bustling streets of Polokwane to the remote agrarian villages of the Vhembe and Mopani districts, the deluge has claimed lives, displaced thousands, and brought the province's economy to a virtual standstill. The crisis began following a sustained period of low-pressure systems over the Indian Ocean, which channeled unprecedented levels of moisture into the interior of southern Africa. Meteorologists from the South African Weather Service had issued Level 9 and Level 10 red warnings, but the sheer volume of precipitation, exceeding 300 millimeters in some areas within 48 hours, overwhelmed the province's drainage systems and natural riverbanks. Rivers such as the Limpopo, Limpopo, and Letaba have breached their banks, transforming adjacent plains into vast inland seas. The provincial government has since declared a provincial state of disaster to fast-track emergency funding and resource deployment. The human cost of the floods is staggering. Provincial disaster management teams have confirmed several fatalities, mostly attributed to drowning or structural collapses of informal dwellings. Search and rescue operations, supported by the South African National Defence Force, are currently underway to locate dozens of individuals reported missing after their vehicles were swept away by flash floods. In the Vhembe District, hundreds of families have been evacuated to makeshift shelters in community halls and churches. "We lost everything in minutes," says Thabo Mulaudzi, a resident of Messina whose home was submerged. "The water didn't just rise. It rushed in like a wall. We only had time to grab our children and run." Limpopo's infrastructure has suffered a catastrophic blow. Key arterial roads, including sections of the N1 highway which serves as the primary trade corridor to Zimbabwe and the rest of the SADC region, have been temporarily closed due to sinkholes and bridge washouts. Over 15 major bridges have been identified as structurally unsound or completely destroyed, isolating entire communities from medical facilities and food supplies. Submerged substations have led to prolonged blackouts in Phalaborwa and Zanin. Furthermore, the siltation of dams and damage to pumping stations have contaminated local water supplies, sparking fears of waterborne diseases like cholera. Known as the breadbasket of South Africa for its citrus and vegetable production, Limpopo's agricultural sector faces billions of rands in losses. Large-scale farms in the Letaba Valley are reporting the total loss of seasonal crops, while small-scale subsistence farmers have seen their livestock swept away. The Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development is currently assessing the damage, but early estimates suggest that food prices across South Africa may rise in the coming months due to the supply chain disruptions caused by this disaster. Presidential authorities have visited the affected areas, promising swift intervention. The South African Red Cross Society and various NGOs have mobilized to provide dignity packs, blankets, and clean drinking water to those in evacuation centers. "Our priority is the preservation of life," stated the Limpopo Premier during a press briefing. "We are working around the clock to restore basic services, but the scale of the damage to our road network means that some areas will remain inaccessible for days. We urge citizens to avoid crossing low-lying bridges and to remain on high ground." Climate scientists warn that the increasing frequency and intensity of these flood events in Limpopo are symptomatic of broader climate shifts. The La Nina phenomenon, coupled with rising global temperatures, has made the Limpopo River basin increasingly volatile. Experts call for a radical redesign of provincial infrastructure, moving away from reactive disaster management toward resilient urban planning that can withstand future extreme weather events. For those looking to assist, donations of non-perishable food, clothing, and clean water are being accepted at designated drop-off points managed by Gift of the Givers, one of the primary disaster relief organizations currently active on the ground in Limpopo. As the rain begins to subside in some parts of the province, the long and arduous journey of reconstruction begins. For the people of Limpopo, the scars left by the Great floods of 2026 will be felt for generations to come.